welcome back to The Music Made Me, episode 2. Here we go. We're on a roll. We're making this happen. Today we have Mr. Dan Davidson, former rock star turned Canadian country musician. Today he talks about the entire journey from university into rock band, Tupelo Honey, and into his country career. Some famous friends along the way: Josh Ramsey, Dallas Smith, Brett Kissel. We have it all. We hope you enjoy episode 2, Mr. Dan Davidson.
So what's shaking, Brendan?
Oh, not too much. It's been a long time reunion in the making, hey?
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure you don't remember.
It's been many moons.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw on social media, I found a ticket from one of the shows. But it doesn't have a date on it, so I'm not sure. I'm thinking it had to be like right around like 06. Now, is it Tupelo or Tupelo?
Tupelo.
Yeah, I always get that mixed up in my mind. I always want to say Tupelo, but Tupelo.
It was the all-time worst band name decision.
Well, where did it come from?
Ever? Because
isn't it like Southern Honey or something?
Yeah. Well, so we were in a contest when the band first started. We were just trying to get it off the ground, and we had like 3 songs, and we entered in this contest, like a band contest or whatever, to win. I think it was like recording time or something. And we didn't have a name. And so our singer at the time, he put in his dad's favorite song name, which was Tupelo Honey by Van Morrison.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, oh God, I hate that name. But we used it, and then we won the stupid contest. And then from that contest, we got booked at Stage 13, which is like the Big Valley Jamboree of rock and roll back then. And our first show was for 5,000 people.
Oh, geez. So you had to keep it then.
Yeah, actually, there's a funny story about that. Is we got off stage, and this guy was in the crowd, and he was like, "Hey, I booked for the beer garden stage at Stage 13. You guys want to come do a set opening for, I don't know, it was Vince Neil or something like that?" And we're like, "Whoa, crazy, our first show. It sounds great." But we only had 3 songs. So we had 2 weeks to write 45 minutes worth of material and play it live. And we pulled it off somehow. So it was
really
crazy. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is nuts. And we'll also get into it later, but like your crossover from rock to country, in country music, that really can't happen. I don't think, because from what I've heard, country music is much more intense a writing process than the rock music.
Yeah, it's a different animal for sure. Like, I do a lot of co-writing and rock and stuff too, but at the time, like as a new band, we were just trying to figure out what our sound was, and we didn't even know what co-writing really was. We know that as a band we made music together, but I didn't learn about co-writing until we started traveling to Toronto lots. It was actually, strangely enough, another band competition. So we won one in Edmonton that was like the Alberta wide one. And so they sent us to Toronto for the finals. This is probably in 2006 or 5. And we won the national one. And there was a guy in the crowd named Jeff Dalziel who worked for Sony Music at the time. And he was like, "Hey, do you guys want, like, I'm a producer. Do you want to come out to the Sony building and we'll just sit and we'll do some co-writing? I'd love to maybe work with you guys." And so we were like, "Oh, cool." And we were really guarded about it at first, because we were like, it sounds weird bringing somebody else in on our music. But the more we did it and the more we met these people that were pros, it made a lot more sense. Like, it was about gaining a percentage and thinking about something differently rather than losing a percentage. So that first record, or I guess it was technically our second record, we did with that guy, Jeff Dalziel, who's still my producer today, actually, in the country stuff.
Oh, nice.
And it really opened our eyes to a lot of things. And it was the most, probably, like, it was definitely my biggest breakout release I think I've ever had in my career. Like Found, I suppose, was bigger, but this was, we were all of a sudden on a national stage, and we were touring with some of the biggest bands in the world, and people, we were getting lots of radio play. We had top 40s on 2 formats, and it really started to make sense to me. And in country music, that's what it always is. It's always co-writing with 2 or 3 people, and it's I don't know. It's strange because it's less guarded in some ways creatively, but it's everybody's got their squad. So once you start to find people that you click with, people generally tend to write with those folks quite a lot.
Oh, okay. Now with Tupelo Honey, It was Grant McEwen that you met at, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was playing in little punk rock bands and stuff in around St. Albert, Alberta for a long time, and so I'd known who our guitar player Tyler Danaki was, because he was like, well known as the freakishly insane guitar player from our town, and so I was terrified of him, and so we met, and then I went to Grant McEwen for music, and I just happened to start the same year that Tyler did as well, and so we kind of bonded over not loving jazz at all, and it was a jazz school.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, we were like the delinquents in music school, but we got through it together, and we realized we wanted to start a rock band, and Steve, our bass player, was the year ahead of me at Grant McEwen, and Greg, one of his best friends, was a drummer that had just finished his drum thing at Grant McEwen. So we all kind of had this tie, and we kind of formed because this folk girl needed a band, and we were terrible. So we just did this kind of hired gig, and it was great. We had a lot of fun, and we realized, okay, this is the bunch of dudes that we have to make music with. So we started writing, and we found a singer. This is before I knew that I was gonna sing. I fell into that a little later on in the progression of the band, but yeah, it was really cool, and it's nice to have that music school background, because for me, I was never sort of like I guess like a scholastic musician. Like, I'd never studied theory or harmony or really gave much thought to it. I was always kind of emotionally driven, but trying to keep up with these guys, like, these are like the best players I think I've ever played with, and still, like, I compare it to a lot of people that we tour with. These are probably some of the best musicians in Canada. So for me, it was like the best schooling possible to have to keep up with these guys all the time. And so yeah, that was a big part of my development.
And so your upbringing, like, you were going into college thinking, I want to do something in music. That was your goal for a career. So growing up, when did that sort of start, that dream of going into the arts, going into music?
Well, to tell you the truth, honestly, after I graduated grade 12, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I loved playing in bands. I loved playing guitar. I love music, but I didn't really even consider it as a career, to be honest. I randomly threw a dart at music school with an application, and because in Edmonton we're lucky enough to have one of the best music schools in Canada, the Grant McEwen music program, and my one of my best friend's dad was the bass professor there, and I was like, well, he's cool, and I like what he does, and I don't know, maybe my guitar teacher at school was a McEwen grad. So I just kind of randomly applied. Then I went on summer vacation, and I don't know what happened, but I got a late message saying like, hey, you've been accepted. And I was like, oh my God, I have to go to university now.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm born in November. So I'm one of the younger sort of people in the program. I was 17 when I went, and so it was like a weird introduction to university, and I'm standing outside the beer gardens watching all my friends going, hey guys, does the beer taste good? But yeah, that I honestly, I didn't really consider it. And then I went to McEwen, and I realized what I loved and what I didn't love about music. I really loved the recording classes, the composition classes, the ear training classes, and it was like a real wake up call for me to figure out how I needed to focus as a grown up to be a musician, because I knew where I was at, and I knew, like, I could play and it sounded great, but I didn't understand what was going on. I could seeing people that would play and be able to clearly understand the interplay between harmony and melody. It's kind of next level. So that was scary for me, honestly, but I learned that I loved playing music with people and feeding off people. I learned that I didn't love music that wasn't natural to me. And natural music to me is just things that, make you feel something, give you the goosebumps. And that was always rock and pop in the beginning for me. Yeah, so it was an interesting experience. Like, there's a lot of music schools that focus on more contemporary music. And that's probably somewhere that I would have felt a little bit more comfortable. But I look back at my time at Grant McEwen and sort of appreciate that level of uncomfortableness that I was living with daily, just the fear of being called upon to say something in class.
Yeah. And then, so coming out of that, joining the guys, forming a band, and then, like you say, all of a sudden you're up on stage, you're playing a festival, you're playing to big crowds. Like, what kind of, was that a shock almost, that you go from not really thinking about music as a career to going to university for it, and then all of a sudden you're in this band who's all of a sudden doing well?
It was a little weird, but it was really validating because we wrote the first EP in my guitar player's basement, and it was the style of music that I hadn't tackled before. I hadn't tried mainstream music. I was always about fringy stuff like punk rock or metal or anything that felt like it was cool if you knew about it before anyone else did. That was
Right.
kind of what I was into at the time. So it was really interesting that we had a plan and we came together with these other three guys. And I was like, okay, so we're targeting radio. We're gonna make radio rock songs. And so, it's really amazing when we released our first song and it was number one in Edmonton. And before long, we were having 1,000 people come out to watch us in Edmonton, which is insane for
for a local show.
band.
Yeah.
So it was really cool, and it did happen in a hurry, and there's so much to learn. Like it's kind of insane. Like I call it my rock 101. It was my university education in the music industry, because we were coming up at a time where the industry was absolutely diabolically crashing. Like everybody was getting fired all the time. I remember there was a time where we had Atlantic New York flying out to see us in Edmonton. Like they didn't even know there was an Edmonton, I think, and the day they were supposed to leave, it was the show day, and we got off stage, and I asked our manager at the time, it was just basically a buddy, and I was like, what did they think? And he's, well, everybody got fired today. So, back to the drawing board. And that only happened, that happened a few times. And so that was what really spurred me to start thinking as an independent artist. And so I had to learn tour managing and songwriting and production and, all the little things that we have to do to get through fundraising, grant writing, all the stuff, even graphic design and video editing I had to deal with a lot.
Right. So university kind of taught you the theory behind music, and then you almost had another like 3 or 4 years of business training after that, honestly. Right? That wasn't in university, but it was almost the same.
It really did feel like that. It was pretty wild, man. It's an experience that I'm so glad I had because it set me up perfectly for my country career. Like it was a godsend. As hard as it was some days, it really did help.
And now talk about sort of, what was it, the 2010 area where you the band was going through some changes and your lead singer left, and then was it sort of, I either jump in front of the mic or we dissolve the band, or what was the thinking at that point?
Yeah, well, it was a good time to do it. I mean, looking back on it, it was one of the hardest moments in our music career when we knew that we weren't going to be able to move forward with Matt, our singer at the time, and we'd done 3 records with Matt. Yeah, we did 3 records with Matt, and when we were out on the road, it was fantastic. Everyone was brothers, and it was great. But we were really hitting a wall, and the interest level from him was not there, and so we decided to kind of move forward without him. And that was a time where, man, I can't even tell you, the 3 of us just felt lost. Like the 4 of us, we didn't know exactly how we were going to pull this off. If we should start a brand new band, if we should, continue and find a new singer. And luckily we had our producer, Jeff Dalziel, who was always very supportive of us and a guy that really believed in the project. And he was like, you know what, let's continue on. Cause we had a record of songs that were ready to record and we were ready to go. And so, after tossing around who we could try out, we had a bunch of friends that were singers that we wanted to try. And we tried, I don't know if you remember this guy, but he was a really good friend of the band, and he was an American Idol or Canadian Idol second place runner-up. His name Rex Gowdy.
Right, yeah.
A newfie, and I loved Rex, but he lived too far away. It just wouldn't have made any sense. So, yeah, I mean, there was a day that I remember getting a call from Josh Ramsey from Mariana's Trench, who has been a longtime friend of the band too. We basically started out at the same time, touring together, and like, what an awesome guy. He called me and said, dude, I think you should sing in the band. Like,
Oh, nice.
after touring with them for so long, he's like, there's only a few guys that can hit some of those high notes, and it's, like me and you and Todd Kearns and a couple guys. So I think you should do it. And I was kind of like, you know what? That's a pretty solid vote of confidence. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
called up my producer Jeff and I was like, I'm gonna come out to Toronto and I want to sing these songs. Don't tell the guys. We'll just send it to them and see what they think. So
Nice.
so that's what I did, and all the guys were pretty pumped. And it was like, I'm a very different singer than Matt, and I knew that it was going to be one of those things that we lost some fans and we gained some fans, and so we put out this record. It was a double record, half acoustic and half electric, and I knew it was going to be a tough record for us, and it was like a bit of a pivot in our sound and our personality, and for our fans it was a little new too, but we got through it. And that record, thing I was most proud about in 2010 and 11 was that we were able to stick together and sort of get through it. It's not an easy thing to do. There's not a lot of bands that can change singers and not die immediately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 3 Days Grace, and I don't know. I don't know if you can list off many. Like, there's some, of
Yeah,
course, some classic rock bands that
Van Halen and
yeah,
stuff, but
exactly.
yeah.
But yeah, not many local Canadian bands. But so for you, jumping in front of the mic, what was that like, just like mentally for you, and sort of switching gears into frontman mentality?
Well, I always kind of, I think, was more naturally a front man. Like, Matt was great, but he was a different kind of a singer. Like, he was very like aloof, mysterious, not saying very much kind of guy, and I like to be right in the audience's face and be loud and talking. And I'd always kind of like jump in on the mic when Matt didn't have something to say when we were playing shows. And so it felt really natural to do the entertainer part of it, as I love that stuff. Like, that's my favorite thing about music, is just being able to talk to people and connect with people. I love that. But the singing part was really tough, because as a backup singer, I was always doing short bursts, right? And for me in Tupelo, it was always at the top of my range, high volume sort of stuff. And then so when we got to this record and I was writing the vocals for it, I think I was in that mentality, and I hardly left any places to breathe, and it was right at the top of my range, especially our last record. So it was very, very hard to sing. Like, it was a real crash course in not losing your voice every night. So that was really, really challenging. But it was definitely something that was a great thing to go through. I mean, it taught me a lot about how I need to take care of myself and where I sound best, and how to work on my breaks between my chest voice and my head voice, and what that even means. I'd never thought about these things before, so it was kind of it was a lot to think about.
So all the way along the way, like, it feels like in every segment of your career, you've had this training in some different area of music, right? Like I say, university, and then starting with the band and just learning the business behind it, and then your next stage is learning to be a lead singer, and you're just kind of progressing as you go, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's essentially it. And it's hard for me to not look back now and be like, I wish if I'd have known then what I know now. I say that to myself too often, but I think the part of this business, and a part of having a fulfilling career in music, is the journey, and realizing how you learn things along the way, and the feeling you get when you experience something for the first time.
Right. And so when did country start to creep in?
Well, the band, like, we'd released, I think, Tupelo's best record in 2014 or 15, and it was called Brave New World, and I think it was very progressive. Like, it was, I guess, similar to like 30 Seconds to Mars. For me, it felt very like mountaintop rock, like it was arena stuff. But at the time, active rock radio, where we'd previously lived our entire careers, it started to become like Five Finger Death Punch, and strangely enough, things like the Lumineers. So it was completely confused, and we just didn't have a home. And honestly, rock was just in a really tough place. Like, there was venues shutting down, and not really a whole lot of bands to tour with, in Canada anyway. And so it was really challenging. And we decided, after pushing that record for a while and being really proud of the music that we put out, that we wanted to try some different things. So, when I started singing, we got this guy named Brad Simons, who was basically Dan 2.0 in the band, better guitar player than me. I mean, he's amazing. So Brad went on to start probably one of the most successful studios in Edmonton. It's called Velveteen Audio, and he's producing and working on lots of great young artists, especially pop stuff. and Tyler started getting into painting a lot actually, and he's an unbelievable painter. Like he's selling art and doing art classes and just exploring a different side of his creativity. And it's honestly, it's shocking if you ever go look at his stuff. Tyler Dynaki. And Greg was playing in a lot of different bands as a drummer. He started playing for Econoline Crush and just a ton of different bands. And Steve, our bass player, went to law school, so he's a lawyer now.
Nice.
Yeah, and for me, I went back to school and I got my business degree, and it's so crazy how easy it felt after having to do that basically as a job for the previous 8 years, right? So it was I got that, and then I finished, and I had a bit of a moment where, what am I going to do with my life? I'm like, oh yeah, music. So went right back to it, and I started thinking about a solo project as I had developed a little bit of a record label and a production company, and we were producing some top 40 songs for some pop artists and stuff. And that was really cool too. I was able through that to sign a publishing deal and get a lot more songwriting sessions going and sort of develop my reputation as a songwriter and a producer. And so that was helpful, but I was missing the performing, and I was missing doing something out there that was me. And, country was blowing up, and I was seeing a lot of my friends that were in rock succeeding in country, especially, namely Dallas Smith, who is our biggest country star. And, I went out to see him open for Florida Georgia Line at Rexall Place here in Edmonton, or Rogers, or one of the two. And it was amazing. Like, it's just a rock show. It's both of those shows were just a rock show, and it was like everything that I knew. And I started realizing that there's like, for all the years that we were writing, I think I'd suppressed the twang a little bit. And like, when you're from Alberta, it's just in you somewhere.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
So I decided I'd just unlock that door. And after I hung out with Dallas that night, he was like, man, you should give this a shot. It's a great scene, and it's not any different from anything that we've been doing for years. And you got a great name for the country. Dan Davidson sounds like a pair of jeans or something.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, I was like, you know what? That's just one of those, another moment of a vote of confidence that pushed me over the edge. The first one with Josh and this one with Dallas. And so I called up Jeff, my producer, and I said, hey, do you want to make some country stuff, and we can just see what we can do? And I put out a song, and luckily enough, through all my years of playing, I've been really good friends with a lot of the promoters that have booked me, and they slapped me on a show. It was the same kind of thing, actually. It was like, hey, you have to play an hour, figure it out. So started writing like crazy and getting a ragtag band together. And when my second song came out, Found, it exploded. Like, it was the top selling Canadian country song. It was the top selling independent song in Canada. And now it's on its way to platinum right now. And it's, that song started my career. And I've spent, so many years just keeping up to the momentum of that. Like, I've had a lot of successful singles, but that one is just the engine that keeps running. So it's been really great. And luckily I've been able to pull Tyler and Greg from Tupelo Honey to play with me in the band for these last 5 years together. And it's, man, it honestly just feels like somebody breathed new life into Tupelo Honey or something. It's really
cool. I was
cool.
going to say, it's like Tupelo Honey 2.0 basically, right?
Yeah, it is, and lightning doesn't really strike twice in the music industry. So I've been very, very fortunate to be able to have a second shot.
Yeah. And going into the country from the rock background, you really went the country route. Like you say, the twang, you had that inner twang in you. And, it's really country music. It's not like necessarily like some of the rock country is out there. It's pretty straightforward country music. So how did you kind of come up with that sound? Like, how does that work, moving over from the rock to the country and figuring out what your sound is going to be?
Honestly, I had no idea, because like I knew what I didn't like. Brett Kissel is a good friend of mine, and he is a country like purist. Like, he grew up only listening to country music. He knows every country music song ever written. Like, he can name something obscure, and he knows how to play it. So it's that's not me. Like, I grew up not with that, but I did have a lot of influence from my dad's country music and my grandpa's country music, which, for my dad, it was more like the Willie Nelson, Johnny Cash kind of thing. But he also loved sort of crossover bands like Blue Rodeo and Lyle Lovett. And so that was in there.
Right.
And I think I gravitate to a lot of things like John Denver and stuff that's like just feels good. and sometimes I don't know why. So when I wrote Found, I asked my producer Jeff, I was like, what kind of song do you think is missing out there? And he's like, well, it'd be cool to have something that's kind of like Honey, I'm Good meets Thank God I'm a Country Boy. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And so I just I didn't even have a guitar in my hand. I was stomping around in my kitchen and came up with the chorus for Found. And I needed somebody to finish it with. And I didn't really know too many country writers in Edmonton because, frankly, there's not very many. And I called up Clayton Bellamy, who, I'd played shows with Clayton before when Roadhammers would sometimes play a rock show, or we would sometimes play like a lacrosse game halftime with bands like that. And he didn't really know me all that well, but we'd met. So I called him and went over to his house, and we just like put on a pot of snobby French press coffee and sat down, and we banged out 2 songs that day. And it took like 2 hours, and it was amazing. And I sent it to Jeff, and he's like, yeah, this is perfect. Let's record this. And we put it out, and it just went from there. But, Clay is a guy that I've been able to really develop a great creative relationship with over the last few years. Like we're working on stuff 3 or 4 days a week together, probably.
Oh, okay. And so how does it feel to come into the country and be able to write your own stuff? Because I was talking to Dallas one time, and he was talking about that transition from rock to country, and the fact that rock, they'd be sitting in their garage having beers, writing the music as a band. Whereas in the countryside, it's more of a business. You're sitting in a room for 8 hours a day, hashing out these songs. But you kind of landed somewhere in between, in being able to write your own songs the way you want to, and not, having someone else write them for you. So how have you been able to kind of navigate that?
Well, in country, it's a lot more common for people to take outside songs. And, I know that's kind of more the type of thing that Dallas does, and that's fine. I mean, if somebody writes a song that's perfect for you and you can go out and make it huge and make some money and make some fans, then that's great. So I'm not opposed to taking outside cuts at all. I just really haven't had the desire to do it yet. Like I've I tried to cut one outside song and it was a disaster.
Oh, really?
I'll tell you the story. So I got sent this song and I thought it was like, oh, this is great. This sounds like something I would do. And, let's try it. I've never tried an outside song, so let's go for it. And so we cut the song and we got clearance from the publisher, but there was some miscommunication in emails or something like that. And one of the writers of the song decided that he wanted the song for an artist he was developing. And so after I'd spent all this money on the song, it got pulled from me and put out by this guy. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I can just let it go. He's an American. I'll put it out in Canada. But then to pump up this song a little bit, they got Megan Patrick to come sing on the song. So then it got pushed out to Canada. So now it's been released twice, and I'm just sitting on this version of it that I'll release one day. I don't know.
Oh man. But, so it's just a lot easier to write your own stuff then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a songwriter, so I like the challenge, and it's I don't know. I find it creatively fulfilling, and it's something I want to do. And my brand has never been as down the middle as a lot of country artists. Like I do a lot of weird videos, and I just try and do things that people aren't doing, because I think when I look back at my efforts in music, I want to make sure that I'm showing some personality and something I can really be like, well, that was me, and I put it out there for the world.
And you're independent right now. And is there a worry that maybe if you sign to a label, if you get picked up, that'll change? Like, are you trying to stay more independent so that you don't have to sort of switch over and do things someone else's way?
I'm not too scared of labels. Like I would be definitely interested in working with a label if somebody came along and it was a relationship that made sense for everyone. But honestly, as an indie, the thing that's so great is owning my own masters. So when a song goes out and it does get picked up by radio or Sirius XM, or it blows up streaming, then that's one of the biggest parts of my income is getting those royalties.
Right.
So I like that. I want to keep that going.
And so Scooter Braun doesn't come out and just steal your whole library. Right?
Yeah. But I mean, there's all kinds of deals, right? So everyone has a different sort of a thing going on. What I would love to have is the industry muscle. Like for me, I know that there's this very small chance that I'll ever win a CCMA because I don't have the the political muscle behind me.
Right.
And that's fine. I don't really care. Of course, I would love to have a CCMA and I would love to have a Juno, but it does take a lot of politics to get those things pushed through. So maybe I'll fluke out one day, but who knows? It's in the meantime, my focus is putting out great stuff and trying to make fans.
Yeah, and you're writing stuff for other people. So is there a difference in the feeling you get when you hear your stuff on the radio and when you hear someone else's stuff that you wrote on the radio?
Yeah, I mean, it's always funny hearing a different voice, singing the ideas that I've come up with.
Right. Yeah. I guess they were in your head, so they kind of have your voice to them, right?
Yeah, and sometimes I can hear like oh, that's very Dan on that moment, but
right.
But honestly, this has been a really great year for me for that kind of stuff. Right now I've got a song in the top 20 on the rock charts with a band called Weapons from Saskatoon.
Oh, okay.
And so that's been a real cool thing. And there's a few other projects that are going to be released right away. Lots of country stuff and yeah, so I love it. It's just it's validating. I think that's the biggest thing. Like it doesn't really feel weird or like I don't stop and stare and have a moment, but it's like, oh, okay, cool. I'm doing it right. Something's working. And
yeah.
That's what, mostly drives us forward and makes us have the good days in the music industry.
And does that help having that side of things and, having that income and having that other side of the business? So you're not as focused on, your music and the money it's making and having, the stress of that? Or do you still have stress over that?
I think I still have stress. Like if I'm the producer on it, then there's deadlines and a quality standard that I want to get to. But if I'm just a songwriter, it's great. Like write it and somebody else worries about how it sounds and somebody else worries about how it gets promoted. But yeah, I mean, it's stressful. The biggest thing is for me right now is finding the balance of how much time I spend working on productions and songwriting for other people while still making sure that I'm steering my own ship and keeping the momentum very strong. So that's a balance that it's new to me this year in COVID. I've really picked up a lot more gigs that are not focused on my career. And I mean, it's great to be busy, so I can't complain there.
And has it been a difficult year, or like you say, has it been sort of okay because you've been able to find these other branches to keep you busy and evolve as an artist?
Yeah, I mean, it's been difficult on the mental sense because, typically in the summertime, for example, I'm gone every weekend and I'm making a performance income and I get to see so many people, like, which I said earlier was one of my favorite parts of this thing.
Yeah.
So it's been a little weird, but on the plus side, getting to spend lots of those summer days with my daughters and, getting that in there. So it's a bit of a give and take, financially, it's not been too bad. I was lucky enough to have good royalty checks come in at the right time and keep these production gigs rolling. So I'm not in a terrible place there, but, yeah, mentally I'm ready to play some shows and see some people and shake some hands and, do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, hopefully to be soon. And you're keeping yourself busy on the video production side. I see your Christmas video, just gold, just amazing.
Yeah, well, that's part of my thing is everyone's putting out these sentimental, like sitting next to the tree, playing a Christmas song. I'm like, there's got to be something else. So yeah, we came up and my partner in all this branding stuff is this guy named Travis Nesbitt, who was the singer of Social Code back in the day, another Edmonton band.
Yeah.
And our friend Russ Dawson, who's another Edmonton musician. We kind of a little creative trio. And so we do all my stuff together. And I remember years ago, they were doing these stupid movie trailers. And I was like, let's do a movie trailer for Die Hard because it's a Christmas movie. And yeah, it turned out great. But like we've been doing with those guys, I've been putting out usually something every month. And so it'll be like month on, it'll be my video. The next month, something viral, like my Dee Dee and the Butter Lovers bluegrass stuff. Or whatever it is, and it's been kind of cool. Like that's a big focus for my COVID life has been nonstop content. That's kind of the motto.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because I'm going through your YouTube page and I'm like the first video it might have been found, but I'm like, oh, we got to talk about that one, and then the next one, oh, we got to talk about that one, and I'm looking at every video thinking, oh, we got to talk about this one because it's just so funny.
Yeah,
it's just great. And Tokyo, what's the story behind that? Were you already planning to go there, or was that like sincerely just for that video?
Yeah, it was 100% just for that. So we, like, I just got my first video grant, and it wasn't much money, but so I was talking to Travis, the director, and we didn't really have much of a plan, and it was November, so it looked gross outside in Edmonton. You can't do much,
Right.
and so he's like, "Well, let's just go. Bring your wife. I'll bring my girlfriend. We'll go to Hawaii and just shoot a beach video." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that sounds cool." So I was just telling my wife about, yeah, maybe we can go to Hawaii and we'll shoot this video there, and you guys can come and we'll just do this whole thing. And she was getting excited about it. And then my phone rings again, and it was Travis. And he goes, "Tell Jen she's not coming. We're going to Tokyo." Click. So we had a bit of a powwow, and we came up with this idea to just dress me up like a combination of like Elton John and John Wayne and plop me in the middle of Tokyo and just
Yep.
watch how weird people thought I was.
And so how much footage did you have? Because I mean, it's a 3.5 minute video or whatever it is. So how much footage did you actually have of that process?
The cameras were nonstop rolling because we never knew what was going to happen. Like we would just go out and be like, okay, we should probably get like a sushi shot. We should probably get a Tokyo Disney shot. We should probably get like, we just had a couple of things on the checklist, but there was
Right.
so much cool stuff everywhere we went that it
Yeah.
was, and people were either horribly embarrassed for me or super excited that there was a cowboy there. So
That's
that was
hilarious.
honestly one of my favorite trips of my life. Like it was so fun, and we were only gone for 5 days or something. We
Was
just
it?
went to Tokyo
Yeah, I
for
was
five,
wondering
six
how long you
days.
were there.
It
The
was
travel
quick.
there and back was probably almost more than the actual days you were there, hey?
Yeah, it was probably almost half, but it was a whirlwind, and I loved it. It was so great.
Oh man. So what's next? Like, are you working on the next album here in COVID quarantine, or what's been your focus?
Yeah, I've got a huge pile of songs, so now it's just figuring out what's coming out next. So I'll probably put out this track called Blind Spot coming out next month. And then past that, I'm working on a song called Roll With It that I'm really excited about. Blind Spot's a little more pop leaning, and Roll With It's way more country leaning. So yeah, I'm working on a big feature for Roll With It too. There's going to be some familiar faces on that track, and yeah, so we're just shooting videos and recording and just keeping making sure the hands aren't idle.
And this day and age, and especially with COVID, it feels like the album has sort of taken a back seat. Like a lot of artists are basically just doing one-off songs and shipping them off to the streaming services and doing videos and um just trying to get their music out there because they have the time. So do you think that this little period, this 1-2 year period, is going to change things in that way at all?
Yeah, I think just in general in this day and age, like albums don't make sense at all. The only reason I'll ever do an album is just so I can qualify for a grant or an award.
Right.
That's really it. Like it's just like what's the date I need to have this in by to get an award? April 2nd. Okay, album's coming in April 1st because I don't care.
Right.
And yeah, I mean like cuz it's it just you end up putting out songs that no one's going to hear because no muscle goes behind them, and it's nice that like I'll have them for shows because it's a great thing, it's a great keepsake for people. And
Right. Yeah.
but for me, I'd rather just keep pumping out singles. It allows me to move faster and stay current, and work on songs that I'm excited about right away. And yeah, I don't know, I think it's a cool thing. Like I'd love, usually I'll get a couple singles down the road and find one that's like, maybe this isn't like a hit song, but it's a cool song, and they'll throw that on the record and put out the record. So
Right. And
that's pretty much my take on it.
how many songs do you typically go through? Like how much are you writing? What do you have to choose from in your library? Is there like a whole huge library that you have going on?
Yeah, I think in the pool I've probably got about 100 songs or so
Oh,
right
really?
now. Yeah, so there's a lot to go through when you're just picking one.
Wow.
But
Yeah.
but they're not all good ones, trust me.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to get all that crap out before you hit the gold nugget.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us and tell some stories. And yeah, it's great catching up because yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 06, 07 in Kelowna. There was a couple of shows I remember catching up with you guys. It was before Matt had left the band. I know that. I know I never got to see you as a front man. up there.
Yeah, those are great years. I really enjoyed those times. And we got to play in Kelowna quite often back then, and it
Yeah,
was tons of fun. A great place
yeah.
to hang out.
And I had the fortune of seeing you. It was already like 3-4 years ago now. You came through town with Brett
Mm,
Kissel, opening
right.
for him at the theater here. So yeah, unfortunately I'd already left my gig at Shaw, so it wasn't in a position to get an interview with you that time. So
Ah,
unfortunately,
curses. Next time.
yeah. So this makes up for it. So
Perfect.
yeah. So yeah, thanks so much for taking the time, and yeah, we'll talk to you again when all this clears up and people are back on the road, and maybe, fingers crossed, maybe you'll make a stop through Kelowna and we can do this face to face.
That'd be amazing. I'm in. Just let me know when.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and
All right.
yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Brendan.
Okay, see ya.
See you, buddy.
Thank you guys so much for listening. We really appreciate it. Be sure to follow, like, share us on all your favorite streaming services. We're out there on all of them, and we really appreciate the support. Thank you for sticking around for episode 2, and we hope that you will come back each and every week as we sit down with some of your favorite musicians, some musicians you maybe never heard of, but will become your favorites. Just talk about their journey and how music made them. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.